Welcome to the LeaderTreks Youth Ministry Trainingcast with Doug Franklin, where we help youth workers like yourself be intentional. Welcome to the LeaderTreks Youth Ministry Trainingcast. I'm Taryn.
And I'm Doug.
And you've heard us say that before. Welcome back. We're glad to be with you today. It's in our neck of the woods. The weather is quite depressing, but
it's a good day to film because the lighting is better.
Right.
So
hopefully you're noticing that we look that much better today than we normally do.
Maybe you'll look older and I'll look younger.
I think, does that work out for everybody? Sounds good to me. Doug, I just got off the phone this week with a youth pastor. He was telling me, first off, a really encouraging story. Maybe about a year ago, he had a youth ministry of 10 students. He grew that youth ministry. Now it's about 30 students, 40 students, so incredible growth,
awesome. Yeah.
Dynamic growth in his youth ministry. Mm-hmm. But the reason for his call was, he said, Taryn, I am so frustrated. Everything that I used to do is not working. I feel like I don't know how to do this ministry I don't know how to lead this ministry that's in front of me. And maybe you're watching this saying, hey, that sounds a little bit like my story. We want to talk about that. Of what do you do when your ministry reaches?
You can't run a youth ministry of 10 the way you run a youth ministry of 25 to 35. I mean, it's just very different. And the same thing is true at like 50 or 60. Sure. Every time your youth ministry grows, things change. Like when you've got 10 students, you can, do the games. Yep. You can teach. You can even run the snack shack. You can do everything, and everybody's okay with it. You can even do counseling because you only got a couple of kids that need extra help every week. So, I mean, you can do it all when you got 10 kids. But if you try to do it all when you got 25, all of a sudden you ain't going to be able to do it all, right?
You're going to be burnt out, you're going to be overwhelmed, you're going to be exhausted, and chances are you're not going to be effective in anywhere near the level that you were with 10 students.
And remember, your negatives are going to increase with students. I'm sorry to say this, but the complaining is going to grow.
Yep.
The I don't like this game is going to grow. Your talk didn't really speak to me is going to grow. Mm-hmm. And those things can become frustrating if you don't understand that all these things that you were doing when you had 10 students that were so positive, they may not seem as positive as 25. Now, there's other good things about having 25. You get a lot more momentum in the room. You get a lot more people raising their hand and sharing. You get a lot more testimonies of God doing incredible things in people's lives. I mean, there's positives too, but I'm saying is that if you're not ready for the negatives, then it can really catch you off guard. This is true in bigger churches as well too. I've been in a lot of churches where we act like we're 250, but 1,000 people are coming. And that can lead to like a roller coaster like this, instead of this kind of growth is what we want. Now, I don't even know if that shows up on video, what I just did, but we'll let Judd do some sort of cool graphic there. But I think that it's important for us to understand that as our youth ministry grows, we need to grow and change what we do. Mm-hmm.
Which for some of us who have gotten into the habit of doing what we did last year, just because it's what we've always done, this is a hard habit to break. So Doug, start to walk us through. What are some of the factors that we need to consider when our ministry suddenly grows and jumps from 10 students to 20, 30, 40?
I think there's some things. I think the biggest thing we got to do is we got to start to get a volunteer leadership team around us. Now, I know that when we do this, our first thought is I'm going to go out and recruit a bunch of people to do things that I don't want to do, right? That's our first thought because that's the biggest benefit to us. This could also be the biggest mistake you make when you start to move from a one-person ministry to a multi-adult volunteer team. So there's things you need to consider. First thing you need to consider is what roles are you going to have? I think we tend to think as youth workers, I know I did, that every adult does exactly what I do. But I know organically how to sit down with a kid, how to have a cup of coffee, and how to turn the conversation to Jesus and then begin to mentor them. I do it organically. Many of you probably do this organically. That's why you're called youth workers, right? But our adult volunteers don't do that.
No.
And our adult volunteers, their greatest need is to know what is their role. So I think the first thing before you recruit anybody is think about roles. What are the responsibilities or the job description for that role? And what are the skill sets that they're going to need? And we'll come back to the skill set in a minute because that's going to become a really important piece. Once you have that, you can go out and recruit people for those roles.
Sure.
It's much better to say, I need you to come and volunteer in the youth ministry to build relationships with kids and teach them God's word than it is to say, you know, the youth ministry is getting overwhelming. I got 25 students coming and I just need help. Who are you going to get if you say the second thing? You're going to get people that are going to come help you, not necessarily come to build relationships with students. So you want to make sure that you got your pitch right, and you get your pitch right by having your roles and your responsibilities right. Now, the skill part, that becomes your training down the road, because those skills to do that role and to fulfill those responsibilities are the things that we need to teach other people to do. And when we know that up front, we can start right away with training, which is essential to have a really great relational volunteer team. And that's the best volunteer team that you can have, is ones that build relationships with students. So if you're in this place where you're ready to start building your team, first think roles, responsibilities, and skills. Then make a pitch to find people that would like to fulfill those roles and responsibilities, and then train them with those skills. If you do that, you're going to put your youth ministry on a great foundation to be able to grow. Because remember, you can effectively minister deeply to about 3 to 5 students at a time. And so the capacity of your youth ministry is really determined by how many adults that you have that can build meaningful relationships with students. So if you can develop a team of 5 folks, you can probably reach those 25 students, right? Now, if you have a team of you and then 4 adults that are just helping you with logistics, like flipping burgers and driving the van and, you know, doing security, then you still have a capacity of 3 to 5. That's really true. So you've got to really consider this, that you got to build the right team in order to accomplish the mission that you have. So think about that in terms of how you begin to think about growing that adult volunteer team.
And if you're watching this and you kind of feel like you're at a loss as to what are the roles in your ministry, what might be a good fit, LeaderTreks has a tool for that called the Sweet Spot. It outlines about 6 different roles in youth ministry, everything from a small group leader to a creative arts director.
To a prayer team member. I mean, everything's in there.
Right, your planner, your serve team, all of that is included, and it's an assessment. So you can actually give that to a volunteer and learn what they're passionate about, what their skill set is, and where they might be a good fit. Because if you can put them in their sweet spot, they're likely to stick with the youth ministry for a lot longer than if they're in an area that is way, way, way outside of their comfort zone, way outside of their gifting.
And that leads me to kind of the second thing you need to do is delegate. And you're talking about the right ways to delegate.
Right.
We tend to think about delegating to things that we don't want to do, right? I love delegating that way, right? Like I want to delegate to my wife to take the garbage can up to the curb because it's a long uphill thing. I mean, but I can't do that, right?
How's that going for you?
No, it's not going anywhere for me. I'm still pushing that can up every week. So, but here's the thing. We can't do that in youth ministry. We got to place people by their passion. And we got to discover what their passion is. Sweet Spot is a great way to do that. When we put people in areas of their passion, they will stay for the season of a youth's life. This is not 1 year. This is maybe junior high through high school, because they're in their passion place. They're doing what they love to do. They can't wait to come every Wednesday night or Sunday because they're having a great time. So placing them by passion is the way to delegate. And delegation is the key. I've seen a lot of youth workers who have developed a great team, but they never give away ownership. They're still doing everything themselves. If you're coming to youth group and youth group starts at 7 and you're still running around getting the snacks, putting together the activities for the night, putting out the balls for dodgeball and you're not delegating. You might have a great team, but that adult volunteer team is going to quickly understand that the best part of the night is hanging out together and talking, not getting to know students and not building relationships and not helping. So you want to make sure that you delegate ownership, not just responsibilities, and say, you're going to own the game. You're great at games. Students love doing stuff with you. You own the game. You tell students why we're playing, what the rules are, and then you enforce it. You own that. And by handing stuff off and delegating, you're actually going to make the youth ministry grow. Yeah. When you hold it and you think to yourself, I can do it better and faster, which you always can, then you're actually going to stymie the growth of the youth ministry. And that's probably why this guy got to 30 or 40 and all of a sudden found frustration, is because the amount of work at 30 and 40 is about 3 times the work at 10. and it burns out. You get burned out. So delegation, big key.
I saw this play out at youth group last night. There's a man on our volunteer team who comes in and helps with security, but he's recently been asked by the church to help with set design for VBS. And this is what this guy loves more than anything else, is to build things. And he's a very quiet man, very reserved, but you see this joy inside of him as he's talking about what he's about to build, and it was really encouraging. It's like, yes, we found the sweet spot for this guy on our team.
And he'll probably stay there the rest of his life doing that as long as he's at the church.
So.
I mean, that's cool. That's awesome. And that also produces really good results too. So that's important. I think the third thing you got to think about is less is more when your youth ministry grows.
Okay.
I was thinking back when I was a youth pastor and I just had a small group of kids in the first youth ministry I was in, and we did everything together. We hung out after school. We just didn't have youth group twice a week. We were doing things on the weekend. And when there was only 10 kids, we could just do stuff all the time, and it was awesome, right? Yep. When that group grew, I started to realize, oh, you know what? If I'm going to hang out with all these kids, I don't have enough days in the week to do it all. And so I had to start pulling back and got rid of sort of the idea of quantity and move towards quality. And I think this is one of the moves you have to make strategically as a youth worker when your youth ministry grows. You just can't do as many things. You're going to need adult volunteers. They don't have tons of time. They're volunteering in other areas of the church. Plus they have families. So you want to make sure that you go with this less is more idea as you grow. And what you want to do is high quality activities where students get a lot of relational time, but at the same time, it doesn't burn you and your team out as you're doing all the things that you used to do when you just had 10 students. So remember, less is more.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense to me, because if I've got a group of 10, I can do several high quality events, and I can maintain the quality even with the quantity. But as I grow my youth ministry, it's going to be a lot harder to do that.
Yeah, it's so true. And then you got to remember, this is the most important thing, I think, after, well, building that team is most important, but this would probably be the next most important thing is communication has to change. The amount of communication you do with parents has to change, and the amount of communication that you do with your church leadership has to change. Let me talk about parents first. A lot more parents require a lot more communication, because you can't just communicate one way and get parents. You got to do a little texting. You got to do a little bit of calendar development. You got to do a little bit of emailing. You got to do newsletters. You got to do all of that. And communication with parents as you grow is more important. And as you grow, you're probably going to grow with students that are not involved in church. And so it's not going to be easy to communicate with them. So you got to develop a better communication program for your parents. And then the other one is you got to communicate with church leadership. The more your youth ministry grows, the more toilets you're going to mess up, the more rooms you're going to mess up, the more whatever. And the church can go negative about youth ministry growth really quickly if you don't manage this right. And so you need to be in your staff meeting saying, hey, we just want to thank the Lord for the growth that we're seeing, but at the same time, we want to ask the rest of the team for some grace and some help, because as we grow, we're going to have to count the cost. It's going to mean more janitorial time. It's going to mean we need more balls for dodgeball. We need more room for small groups. We need more and more and more and more. And some of the people in the church, if they don't understand this, they could begin to push back. And you could begin to feel like, well, I thought our goal was to reach lost kids, and I'm doing that, and now here my church is telling me stop it. So remember, your communication of what's happening is essential. So tell the story of the great things that God is doing in your youth ministry, and as people are glowing in that, say, and by the way, this is going to have a cost to it. We're going to have to sacrifice some to continue this growth. Don't think that they understand that right off the bat. You got to communicate that. So communication with parents, communication with church leadership, really a key when your youth ministry is growing, or otherwise you could find yourself in trouble really quickly. And those aren't big issues when you're 10.
No.
Those are big issues though when you get to be 25, 30.
Right, that parent who's upset with you, that church elder who is not happy with you.
Well, the other church ministry that just lost that room because you're now using it on Wednesday night. All of those issues are big issues. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot to be thinking about if we're seeing this growth from 10 to 20, 30, 40. We've got to build that relational volunteer team. We've got to delegate to them based in what they are passionate about, based in the roles that they're going to love and thrive in. We got to remember that less is more, that we can't maintain that high quality at the same quantity of events. We're going to have to scale back and really focus our energy on a couple of really key elements of the ministry. And then we got to up our game as far as communication goes, specifically with parents and specifically with church leadership, if we're going to see this growth continue.
Just one last thing I want to mention. This is going to take a shift in your own heart as well too. Because what happens is you were a student person. You were all about the kids and you knew them by name and you were in it with them. And a part of your ministry is going to have to move to management. Yeah. And you're going to have to manage the adult volunteers and manage the church situation and manage the parents. And for a lot of us youth workers, this is a really hard move. Here's the thing I always tell youth pastors. If you don't want to make this move, great. Go to a church where you can know everybody and do it. That's wonderful ministry. Right. I've met so many great youth pastors that have less than 20 students in their ministry, and they're awesome. If you feel the tug to management though, and you're like, I can do this. I'm energized by this. Then go big. But really realize this is a heart thing, and it's a calling thing as well too. So just know that if you're fighting this change, there may be a reason why. And small youth ministry, awesome. It's awesome.
Sure thing. Thanks for joining us, folks, on the LeaderTreks Youth Ministry Training Cast. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you soon.